given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed.
What is up, guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the new Grand Theft Auto Online Los Santos Drug Wars DLC. It's been out for over a week now, and we've all pretty much seen what there is. If you haven't, make sure to have a look at it for yourself. You might enjoy it, but I've seen everything there is in it from day one content. I'm going to go over it in my opinions. I absolutely think this is one of the worst DLCs we've ever gotten, all the way up to the last Los Santos Summer Special DLC. That was pretty awful, but this is probably around the same. The day one content, which is what we're talking about, because we can't talk about stuff in the future, we're talking about what we have right now, is pretty bad. And we're going to get into this. First of all, let's start off with the vehicles that we were given. So the day one vehicles consisted of the Declasse Tulip M100, the Zirconium Journey 2, the BF Surfer Custom, the Entity MT, and the 300R. So let's begin. I want to go deeply into the cars first, and then we'll talk about everything else. The Declasse M100, I have purchased all the cars, customized them. I'm going to tell you what I think. This car is pretty mediocre. It looks really cool, but it doesn't do anything that previous muscle cars haven't already done. It's also extremely expensive, 1.7 mil for this car. I personally think it's a rip-off. This car is not really what we wanted. I believe it's based off a Malibu in real life. So really, not that desirable car for most people. The community would rather have a Fox body Mustang over this thing for absolute sure. The next car we have is the Zirconium Journey 2. This car looks like it's got lots of potential for possibilities of customization, etc. But when you actually buy it, the only thing you can change is, of course, your engine, your turbo, transmission, brakes, armor. There's windows, wheels, and livery. And, of course, respray. That is it. There is no extra add-ons for, like, roof bars, ladders. We were expecting a lot of cool customization to possibly be on this vehicle. That was not the case. The next one we had was the BF Surfer Custom, a car that I think everybody can agree this should have been a Benny's vehicle for the regular Surfer, or we should have just got customization parts for the regular Surfer. We didn't need this extra vehicle at all to be purchasable, especially for the price of 450k. It does have some really nice customization, and it is quite unique, but it's still the slowest car in the game, I think. So yeah, it is literally, the old Surfer was the slowest car in the game. I believe this is a smidge faster, but again, it's really bad. It does look good when you customize it, but it really is not worth 450k, unless you got it lying around and you've got nothing else to spend it on. Next up, Entity MT. 2.3 million. This car is a big rip-off, waste of money, because it has such slow handling flags. That means that it over revs, you can't handbrake boost or double clutch. And this thing, the only thing that's good about it is its looks. It is really just a rip-off. A reskin, really. And the final car is the 300R, which is definitely the best car that we got on day one. It has Imani Tech options, which I guess is kind of cool because it means that you can't get blown up as easily. It does look very good as well. It's got some good customization, but it's very expensive at 2 mil as well. And its speed's pretty average, so not really that great at all for cars. Pretty much all of them are just reskins, boring, or useless. So let's take a look at the other parts of the DLC. I can tell you it doesn't get much better from here. Okay, so the next thing in the DLC is the first Dos missions. In the background is some footage from the first one, and it is really, really boring. The first 4 missions are the most boring, and the last 2 aren't too bad, but really they're just reskins of other missions we've seen. They follow the same thing where you go from point A to B and B to C. They're just a big waste of time, and they make you go across the entire map for no real reason. In the first one, you have to go and steal back the journey, which is a so-called new car in this DLC. And then you go ahead and take it to the freak shop. And then That's pretty much it. But it's like 20 minutes long because they make you go from point A to B to B to C. The next three are pretty boring, and then I can remember the final one stands out as being probably the most entertaining. You have to actually steal the Brickade, which is going to be your future acid lab. Again, these are really boring. There are some last dose missions coming later in the DLC, but these are not a good sign at all. They're very boring, repetitive, and they're just really the same things we've already seen. You only play them really because you have to unlock the acid lab. Otherwise, you wouldn't end up playing it because, again, the voicing is cringy. Everything is really just bad. It's not something that you'd really enjoy. So this is the acid lab on your screen right now. Now, some people have been asking, can I just buy the Brickade and that'll be my acid lab? Why can't I customize my Brickade? And you do have to actually unlock this. So to unlock it currently, in the future you'll be able to pay 1.5 mil, but currently you have to complete the 6 first dose missions, which I just mentioned. And then you have to pay 750k to buy the equipment, aka Rockstar want you to spend more money because they want you to buy some more shark cards because they know it's getting close to Christmas and people are going to have some money to spend. So, yeah, this is the best passive income business. I will give it that. Not by much. It's very close to the bunker. It's literally like a couple dollars in game. It's really nothing. This thing is very armoured, so I would say this is the best vehicle from the DLC. It's very armoured, it takes a lot of explosions, especially if you're inside the vehicle, but it doesn't have the best armour. It can have some proximity mines and other mines that can come out the back. You can put a ram on the front. It does have some cool customization, but it's not going to be anything crazy that you can attack people with. It's mainly like a defensive vehicle. So something you can kind of sit in if you don't want to get blown up by something like an oppressor. But jets will easily take this out, as they do with every other vehicle, other than the oppressor, of course. So yeah, again, it's a pretty decent vehicle. It's not the best vehicle. There are better vehicles, but it's up there. So I will give it that. The business isn't bad and the vehicle isn't bad. So that's a pretty good part of the DLC. Let's get on to the next part. There's not a whole lot more to cover that's actually out right now. Okay, so next up to talk about is the Cayo Perico heist, or Cayo Perico. I always see people arguing, they're always arguing whether it's Cayo or Cayo. I say Cayo, you can say Cayo, whatever, but we all know what it is. It's the best heist or even real thing in the game to make your money. Now, it isn't passive, and last DLC they nerfed it so that you had to wait 3 hours to play it solo. So you had to wait 3 hours in between each heist. Well, now they've gone ahead and nerfed it again. Now, guards will see dead bodies on the floor, as well as cameras and the Juggernaut, of course, making it just a slight bit harder to complete. Pretty much now you have to be completely stealth, or you have to go on a rampage and kill every single guard, which nobody wants to do, either of them really, because it's not as fun. Now I get they're trying to be a bit more realistic, but this is quite clearly to make the heist harder, so then you go ahead and buy shark cards. It's all really just a scam, and it's all just to make more money for Rockstar. It's greed, really, because this company makes billions. They actually don't need any more money. They just want more, because this is Rockstar. We should know better by now. We should know that these guys are going to do anything they can to make money. They've already done GTA Plus, and they will take away any good money methods that come to the game. Of course they will. That's pretty much it from this. There isn't any good day one content, really. There's not loads, actually. Just the cars, the nerf, and yeah, there really isn't anything else. They didn't add any customization to OG vehicles or anything. It feels like quite a lackluster DLC to me. Okay, so in this segment of the video, I'm going to talk about how they could have made this DLC much better to play. I'm going to go through everything. So starting off, the missions should have been more interesting. We should have either had more missions to do, or the missions should have been more interesting. Personally, I would have rathered more interesting missions. So I would have rather had one mission that was really, really fun and interesting than 6 really boring missions, which is what we did get. Now, there might be some better missions coming up in the second dose, but this is day 1 content, and we have not played them yet properly, so I can't mention those yet. I will talk about the entire DLC once everything's out, but right now, this is what I think. The next thing they should have never done is added the slow handling flags back. Pretty much means you can't double clutch in cars such as the Jester Classic. Now, the reason they did this is because lots of people were speed glitching, which was apparently game breaking, but really it wasn't, because you couldn't corner with those crazy speeds. I find this odd, and I know exactly why they've done it, but they've decided to patch this over things that are really game breaking, such as God mode glitches. Now, I'll tell you why they do it. It's to make that patch list extremely long. They want to make it as long as it can be, so it looks like really like a lot of effort's gone into the DLC, to people who are naive and to critics. When they're looking and they go, wow, look at this huge list of things that have been fixed, when really they were super easy things that actually didn't need fixing. The next thing they should have done is left Cayo Perico alone. They should have never, ever, and I mean that, never added more things to make it more difficult. We know why they did it. It's to increase shark card sales, but they should have never, ever have done it. The reason I don't think they should have done it is because it just ruins the experience, and there's so many glitches on Cayo which they could have fixed instead of doing this. And this new edition, let's just call it, where the guards can see the bodies, has come with lots of glitches too. Guards can see the bodies through walls now in some cases, which just is unfair, completely unfair. And also, what really annoys me is the fact that there are some really game-breaking bugs in Cayo Perico's heist, which is still not being fixed after almost 2 years. In fact, it will be 2 years now. It doesn't feel like it, but it has been. And they still haven't fixed them, yet they would rather make the heist harder to better themselves than to fix things that the community actually want fixing to better the community. It kind of shows where they really are as a company and what they'd prefer. They prefer to make money over to please their community. That does not surprise most of us, though, because this is Rockstar Games after all. And finally, they should have added some interesting cars that people actually asked for. They could have added the Fox body, pretty much any cars really, and people would have loved it, right? They didn't. They decided to add things like the Malibu, and yeah, the Koenigsegg Jesko is very desirable. Yes, the Nissan Z is very desirable, but did anybody really ask for things like another BF Surfer or the Journey 2? Not really. Now, yeah, it's kind of cool that we got them, and yes, there will be people who argue, yeah, this is a free DLC. The only reason why they give us DLCs is to keep this game alive, right? If they didn't give us DLCs, this game would have died immediately, right? No doubt about it. So they are forced to make these DLCs to keep the game interesting. Otherwise, like I say, they wouldn't make any shark card sales. They wouldn't make any money. It's just a cop-out so they don't have to make GTA 6. We all know this. And people will argue, yeah, it's nice to have these free DLCs, but really, it's not because they want to. It's because they have to. This game would be completely dead if they didn't do it. So, yeah, don't think they're playing nicey nice and giving us nice free stuff. They're doing it because they have to, not because they want to. Anyway, that wraps this video up. That's enough of the ranting and rambling, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye, everyone.